this is Cathynan Herbal ABC, and I'm Cathynan. I'm called that because that's what my oldest grandson likes to call me, which is relevant because this series, this ABC that I'm going to be doing, is because I'm putting a book together for a little legacy to my grandchildren. They've all learned a little bit, whether they wanted to or not, about herbs with their nanny, and actually have shown quite a lot of interest, and it's lovely to be able to pass on my little bit of knowledge. And that's what this is also about, is that I have got quite a lot of knowledge put together now, and I don't want it to go nowhere. So yeah, I'm making the book for my grandkids and sticking this out on YouTube, and we'll see what happens to it. Yeah, it's about sharing my love of herbs and my faith in some of the remedies that we'll be talking about. And it's a two-way thing. So please feel free to comment constructive criticism where you think that maybe I've got something wrong, want to talk about it, it's fine. And also any ideas extending our communal knowledge about each herb. And I've chosen this format, quite a simple format, so that I stay on track, because I will veer off all over the place. Quite passionate about my subject, and I can always think of something to say. So what I'm going to do is, it's going to not be, if anything, fast-paced about this whatsoever. The technology, although I'm getting some excellent help elsewhere, my knowledge, I hope, will improve during the series. Yeah, so please don't expect anything too flashy. It's not going to happen. Okay, so the format that I've taken is this. So first, every time I will tell you the herb and its name, and also any Latin names or traditional folk names, whatever that I know of. Especially as some of the folk names tell us 10 times more than the Latin names do. Well, that's not true. I mean, if your knowledge of Latin is there, of course Latin names tell you something, but the folk names tell you something that's really inherent in our history, and it's a lovely way to learn about the herbs, is to learn why they're called what they're called. Then the first thing I'll go into every time after the name is the cautions. So I will say, to start with, if you have anything serious wrong with you, of course consult a professional practitioner. My main philosophy about all these herbs is that if you keep gently looking after yourself every day, then the likelihood of you falling for some of the more serious diseases is lessened. And also, if you do fall, then your recovery time is, I think, quickened, made faster. And the whole process becomes a little bit easier. I've seen my friends drop, and my system is such that I can kind of get anything and it doesn't hit me too hard. I mean, if, you know, I could get berry and die tomorrow, and that would make me sound like a hypocrite. But on a general level, my health is pretty good, especially for my age, and I'm on no pharmaceuticals whatsoever. Okay, I will own up to the odd ibuprofen, and I've had a very rough winter, which I'll tell you more about because it is again relevant because of the herbs that I use to look after myself. And that's what this is all about as well, really, is we can look after ourselves. We don't need to go running to the doctor for everything. We were taught that we should. But now, as most of you realise, these things are letting us down. And also the pharmaceuticals that are used, quite often the side effects are far worse than the original problem. So I've got a million reasons why I respect herbs so much. I'm going to stop now because if I do it too long, the technology doesn't like it. So I'm going to come back in a second. So this is the second part of my general introduction to Catthynan's Herbal ABC. After the cautions, we'll go through the cautions quickly first. So I will go through these cautions at the beginning of every herb that I talk about, primarily just to get it over with, so that we can get on to all the good stuff. And also, if you are in the category of people that this herb wouldn't be particularly good for, you can switch off if you want to. So I'll tell you straight up. I mean, the most sensitive people usually with the herbs are pregnant women, and I will always tell you if it's slightly dangerous for a pregnant women to be using each herb. And apart from that, most of the herbs I use are not dangerous. They will be dangerous to some people just about the same way as almost anything else is. If that's the case, I will tell you. Okay, so then I'll go on to the actions of each herb and their medicinal uses and what they can help prevent and sometimes cure. Quite simple, but it'll take some explaining for each herb. Then we'll go on to preparation, and the preparation that I'm using mainly is the preparations that I use, and because my lifestyle is quite hectic usually, these preparations take no time at all, and they take no great medicinal knowledge. Quite often teas, sometimes an ointment, sometimes a tincture, nothing very complicated. This will change. I've only had my most recent gardens a few years. And as, of course, they grow more mature, I have more herbs to harvest. And so my ambitions on how to use those herbs are going to change. Basically pretty basic preparation. And now the recognition of each herb. So the herbs I'm using are all either easy to grow, easy to find, or very cheap to buy in this country. This was my premise when I first started collating 5 years ago. Started to collate the knowledge I got from the course that I did, which covered everything, Ayurvedic and Chinese, which is all wonderful. And I can certainly chat about that sort of thing. But I wanted this first alphabet anyway to be totally about stuff that you can do yourself and that involve very little money. Mainly because I learned about herbs because I was a single mum of 3 kids, because the doctors was a long way away, because I had become disillusioned completely with the pharmaceutical industry, especially in the face of what the treatments they were trying to give me for my children. And that was when I genned up and started looking at alternatives, as did many, 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 many of us. I certainly wasn't alone. But I've kept at it. And being quite extreme in nature, I wanted to delve into exactly how we could look after ourselves. And I'm kind of spent the rest of my life doing that, really, more or less. So after recognition, which will help you with planting, but also, of course, foraging, we'll go on to how to grow these herbs, most of which I will have some experience of. I've been a gardener quite a lot in my life. And again, most of them are going to be pretty easy to grow because they're largely native plants, because that's my premise in doing this. After that, I go to permaculture. This is a subject that's very dear to my heart, and we will be going into why every plant that we look at is not only good for us, but it's also good for the soil and the environment in general, and the wildlife and the bees and everything. Permaculture is very important to me, and it's going to be an interesting little section of this series, I think. Then I'm going to go into the phytochemicals, and I will stutter and stammer because it's all the science, and I do know this stuff, but it nevertheless trips me up quite a lot. Just so that you know which constituents of each herb is the active constituents that are going to cause an effect. After that, I go to the magic, the folklore of the plants. We have to respect the fact that these plants have been around for a long, long while, and people all over the world have got very similar, actually, stories about each herb. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll go in, at the very end, we'll go in and do a little tarot spread for the influence which each herb. Now, I started learning my herbalism from culpepper, and I would thoroughly recommend anybody who wants to study herbs to look at him. And he was very knowledgeable about the astrology of the herbs, which planet ruled which herb and that sort of thing. So I'll be going into that. And as I say, the tarot. So that's it. So that's what my Cathynan's Herbal ABC's basically going to look like. Hi, we're talking about Ellis for Liquorice today on Cathynan's Herbal ABC. First, we're going to start with be aware, and really be aware, beware. Licorice is probably the most dangerous herb in this alphabet. It's not the sweetie. It's not licorice all sorts. Any more than marshmallow is the horrible blend of chemicals and sugar that you get. It should not be used long term, and it should definitely not be used daily for a long time. Excess can cause headaches, lower your potassium, raise your blood pressure, and cause a fall in renin and aldosterone. Or aldosterone, I'm not sure which. Renin is a protein in the kidneys, and aldosterone is a hormone produced in the adrenal gland. It wouldn't be helpful to use licorice long term for depression, and it should not be used during depression or if you have cirrhosis. It should not be used with digitalis. I mean, you're not going to run around using digitalis on any kind of regular basis anyway, because that's a really dangerous herb that I wouldn't have even thought of it has its uses for sure. Digitalis, it's foxglove, and it will start failing heart, but never use it without thoroughly researching it and having someone professional with you. And probably for most of us, we're never going to use foxglove. But licorice should serve anyway. So never use the two together. May also cause fluid retention in your face or your ankles. So that would be a sure sign if you were using licorice regularly. And people do use it quite regularly as a digestive. It's very popular to have. I stayed with an Italian family who had a cup of licorice tea after every meal while I was there. So yeah, check with your doctor before using licorice if you're using prescription drugs. It's rare, but excess licorice used on a daily basis over a prolonged time could even be fatal. So it's not something to be messed about with. Having said that, it's wonderful. So please stay and listen to what it can do for you. Okay, so to prepare licorice, you can make a decoction of licorice by using 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of the dried stick or leaves to 1 cup of water, which you then bring to the boil and simmer for 15 minutes. You can chew licorice sticks, really popular in some countries. Even as like a teeth cleaning stick, which is more widespread than you think. Very popular in Ethiopia, and I'm not entirely sure, but they may have been using licorice. My memory is quite a long while since I went, but I remember being very impressed by their teeth cleaning sticks. Or you can use the powdered root in smoothies, which is how I'm currently using it. There's a whole tale as to why I'm not growing it, which maybe I'll come to later. You can incorporate licorice into your diet in the form of Pontefract cakes, for example, which are naturally occurring, naturally sweet, without any sugar in them. So they're quite a good way of indulging your sweet tooth without sugar, for those of you who are trying to not go down that route. Yeah, you can make a tincture by drying the roots and cutting them into thin slices, and then filling a jar half full, and then filling the rest with vodka and leaving it to macerate in the dark for 8 weeks, shaking it daily. It's not a good idea to exceed 3 cups of licorice a day. I mean, it does taste quite nice, and it is quite moreish once you get used to it. It's not as strong as, the sweets have far stronger taste. The licorice tea, you can make it to your own liking. If you want it strong, you can have it strong, but it's not such a strong taste as the sweets. And it's got it's naturally sweet, so it's naturally moreish for me. For me at the moment, I've got quite sweet tooth, so I'm having to be extra strict and not. My worst thing is that I like to sit in cafes, and cafes sell cake, and I don't even like cakes that much, but you have to have something while you're sitting in the cafe. So that's one bad habit. I'm really trying very hard at the moment, and I'm doing quite well. I'm making chocolate, like a chocolate mousse with cacao powder and avocado and other stuff, to taste. And the other thing I'm doing is making my own oat milk and making a cacao drink every night, which is actually getting better and better as I'm getting better at it. And I'm using alternately vanilla pods. I'm using vanilla extract, which is sold by an essential oil company that I know is very reputable. Not entirely sure whether I should be doing that, so please tell me, someone tell me if I shouldn't be doing it, but I really can't see the problem. So yeah, I'll continue until I find out different. But anyway, I'm using a mix of, I made a syrup with agave syrup and the vanilla pods, which was quite simple. I boiled the vanilla pods up in the minimum amount of water I could, and then just mixed the whole lot with the agave syrup, which made it a bit runny, but it's okay because I was just using it for that. And I'll do the same with my dandelion syrup next time. Next year I'm going to harvest dandelions, I promise, as much as I possibly can, because they're so precious. Okay, so we're going to come back and talk about the actions of licorice in a moment. So licorice can heal mouth sores. It's antiseptic with a broad spectrum of antibacterial and antiviral properties. Licorice is astringent, so that means it's able to bind and contract tissue. It can reduce intestinal inflammation. The pounded root can be used in tiny amounts on cold sores. I tend to use echinacea, but I'll give licorice a go. The licorice, I've just got myself some powdered licorice, as I said. So I'll give that a go next time. Licorice is very helpful against adrenal failure. Pontefract cakes are especially effective. So again, not to overdo it. To overdo it will cause adrenal problems, as we've said. But if you don't have massive adrenal problems now, Pontefract cakes and licorice in any form will be a way to guard against it. And by the same token, it's anti-stress and anti-spasmodic. Oh yeah, and licorice is also antioxidant and anti-ulcer. It's a smooth muscle relaxant. It's also an immunostimulant, so it's good for your immune system because it stimulates the production of interferons, which are signalling proteins that respond to viruses. So really good for your immune system, licorice. Also enhances antibody formation. So antibodies are protective proteins produced by the immune system. So again, all these things add to licorice's, I want to say efficacious. I wanted to say the noun, anyway, how good it is. Beneficialness. Efficaciousness. That's not it though. It's a shorter word. It's efficacy. I can see it written down. I just can't say it. Okay. So where are we? Yeah. It also stimulates the adrenal gland and is a thymus stimulant. The thymus is a lymphoid organ of the immune system. Licorice also protects against tumours and free radicals. It's anti-hepatotoxic, so it's protective against toxins in the liver. It's anti-malarial. It protects against radiation. It was famous historically for its use as a mild laxative, which is probably why it was made into a sweet in the first place. It's quite often the case, the same with marshmallow, that these things are made into sweets because of their efficacy. There you go. It came back then. It came back. They were only sweets in the first place because they were good for the kids. So if your little one was a bit bunged up, you'd give him a little licorice sweet. It's also an expectorant, promoting the expulsion of mucus from the respiratory tract. It's demulcent, which means it soothes, by forming a protective film over mucous membranes. And it's also an immunomodulator, a substance that modifies our immune system so that it can respond to disease. So it's so good for your immunity. And it's rather than echinacea that you should take when the problem appears, you should only take licorice before the problem appears, and hopefully the problem will never appear and you won't need your echinacea. So I'm not going to go full on, I'm not going to make myself ill on licorice, but I'm going to give it certainly a go at times when I know, the seasonal times when I know, and particularly with me it's always autumn and spring where I'm particularly vulnerable, and maybe I'll just up my licorice intake a little bit at those times. And maybe a cup of tea when you can feel something nasty coming on, and then stop, so you're not doing too much. And maybe if you've had a drink, I'm no alcohol for the last must be 6 months now, and I'm pretty determined to keep it that way over Christmas coming up. I managed my birthday, which is always a difficult one. It's also, it's an expect I haven't done this bit. Yes, it's also anti-hyperglycemic, which just means it helps to prevent high blood sugar. So and it's so naturally sweet, and that's another reason why, before they put sugar in everything, you imagine how wonderful a piece of licorice would taste. And stopping you from getting high blood sugar and diabetes and all sorts of things. It reduces gastric secretions and stimulates pancreatic secretions. It increases gastric juices by up to 25%. Without altering the pH. So the pH of the body should always be at around 7.35 to 7.45. Which is slightly more alkaline than acid. And this is also the idea that anything that comes in that's alien to you and possibly damaging to you won't survive in an alkaline atmosphere as well as it will in an acid atmosphere. So the pH range is 0 to 14 and 7 is neutral. 7 is the middle. So it's just slightly, the 7.35 to 7.45 is just slightly veering to the alkaline side. And licorice helps to maintain that balance, which is a good thing. Licorice has an effect like aldosterone, like we spoke to it about before, which is a hormone which works in the adrenal gland and is essential to the kidneys, salivary glands, sweat glands, and the colon. So this aldosterone is, so you don't want to take licorice too much and risk the natural aldosterone in your body going down. But to take it when you think that your adrenal gland, your kidneys, your salivary glands, your sweat glands, and your colon might thank you for it, is a different matter. So, and we're talking about a cup of tea here. We're not talking about massive medicinal doses. Licorice also works like hydrocortisone and can therefore minimise scalp oil secretion. So it's good for your hair as well. 2 handfuls of the herb in a small bottle with white vinegar, and you steep it in the dark until you can see the colour change and smell the licorice. Licorice is great for gum inflammation. So we're back to the mouth, the cold sores and the gum inflammation. regulates estrogen, increasing or decreasing it as necessary. So licorice may be helpful with menstruation and menopause and other reproductive conditions. So it's good for the girls. Licorice is also antifungal, very rich in calcium. In Chinese medicine, it's used against ringworm and is said to cure shingles in 3 days. So, anybody wants to experiment with themselves, you know, after talking to your doctor about the pharmaceutical drugs he's going to give you, maybe give it a go. Maybe give it a go before you go to... I know shingles is miserable. You want rid as fast as possible. But I don't think 3 days is pretty miraculous. It'd be lovely to see somebody did do this with licorice. So please let me know if you have done this with licorice. If you are the licorice expert, I'd love to hear from you. So licorice inhibits liver cell damage and is used widely in Japan to treat or prevent cirrhosis and chronic hepatitis. So the advice is a little bit confusing. Like, when do you use it and when don't you? I would always say use it to prevent rather than to treat. And, you know, maybe by the time you've got cirrhosis, it might just add to the problem. So it might be not a good idea. But again, if anybody knows any different to that, please tell me. You know, this is all a learning process. Nobody knows it all. So if anybody's got any anecdotal or scientific evidence to the contrary or the positive. I mean, the trouble is, and I've said this before, but I'm going to have to stop. Okay, still talking about the actions. I had to stop really quickly then because it had gone right up to 11 minutes, which I don't want to do. Yeah, the thing is with these herbs is that the finance for medical research isn't as available as the pharmaceuticals, which bring in a lot of money. You know, they're not going to spend money on laboratory tests on a stinging nettle when they know full well we can just go up the garden and get that whenever we need it. We're not going to spend any money with them. So yeah, so if anybody's got any clinical evidence or anecdotal evidence about licorice and cirrhosis, I'd be really interested to hear. Chronic hepatitis, they're saying as well, licorice might help. You can combine licorice with turmeric and or burdock as a tea or a tonic, or a mix of licorice, burdock, celandine and milk thistle is also used. Licorice also helps prevent cancer. So yeah, so largely immunity, the liver, the adrenal gland and mouth problems are all covered by licorice. Going to go on now to recognise, and now I think I'm going to start a new video just so that you know where you are with the timings. So this little bit is really short. Okay, so we're talking about recognising licorice and the growing and the permaculture. So licorice is a perennial, which just means that it will generally live at least 2 years, probably 4 or 5. Has a woody base and will grow to about 1.2 metres, so it's nearly 4 foot high eventually as a plant. Licorice leaves are sticky and they're 20 centimetres, that's nearly 8 inches long. And they are on upright stems and are in opposite pairs of leaflets. The flowers I'll show you just a really simple picture there. You'll have seen this, but you see they're just opposite each other, and the leaflets, just called the leaflets. The flowers are light blue to violet. So mine in my picture a little bit too pink, but yeah, light blue to violet, and grow on upright spikes. Licorice flowers in late summer, and the roots are harvested in the autumn. Licorice does best in a well-drained soil, especially sandy soil. They like sandy soil, and near a stream. And that's your ultimate good environment for your licorice. Of course, we're not all that lucky. Licorice, yeah, they need a lot of water during the growing period, especially when the soil bakes hard. And they also need full sun, and no stones. So if you're thinking of planting, you know, obey the simple rules. Mine got eaten by a chicken after I'd nursed them like a baby. Started them off by putting them in the fridge. Was the I think it just said that to do that on the packet, and it worked, and I got about 5 plants, and that went down to about 2 plants, and I took 2 plants all the way up north with me, and only brought 1 back, and the one I brought back I planted, and it just got eaten by a chicken the next day. So it wasn't meant to be. I've got plenty of disaster stories with my plants, my poor plants. So they need full sun, no stones. Their roots grow up to 4 meters long, which is over 13 foot. Which is ridiculously long. Licorice has a taproot and a horizontal rhizomes, which throw up stems. So the rhizomes grow horizontally and throw up more licorice plants. In the second year, and they'll have leaf buds on them. Licorice root should not be harvested before the 4th year. When you harvest, dig up the plant and cut the roots away from the crown. The crown can be stored in a cool, dark place till spring after the frost, and then presumably planted back again. Again, I'm pretty sure. Well, you can leave them in the ground. Of course you can, because you're leaving them in the ground until the first time you harvest. So it's not like you've got to pick up your licorice root and store the crown every year. You haven't got to. Again, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what my logic is telling me. Licorice should be grown in a south or west facing position, which is sheltered. Doesn't like the wind. It's hardy to H5 level, which means that it can withstand a cold winter, even severe, but possibly cannot tolerate open or exposed sites. Partly why I'm not growing it here where I am now, because I've got the north wind racing up my garden. And it doesn't like northerly areas where the licorice can suffer damage to the leaves or the stem, get stem dieback, especially if it's kept in pots. But they grow it in Yorkshire, so whether they've got their little eco-climate perfect, well, they must have, because they're growing it. Licorice can be propagated by sowing seed in a cold frame in spring or autumn. So they're not talking. So it depends where you get your information. Mine was on the back of the packet, and it said to put it in the fridge. But these guys are just saying put it in a cold frame in spring or autumn. So fair enough. Roots can be divided by separating roots with at least 1 growth bud on them, the rhizomes, in early spring. Yeah. We've got no forage section because wild licorice is a completely different plant, and is not edible. Okay, so permaculture and to grow, which we've kind of covered already. The permaculture, what was I going to show you? Oh, and I forgot. That's interesting. Maybe I'll go back and redo the actions video because I've got a nice book to show you. But the permaculture, I'm going to show you this book. It's called A Guy's Garden and it's by Toby Hemingway. And I've already mentioned him before. So he mentions licorice several times during this book. But notably, as a useful plant from a Mediterranean climate. I'm going to sneeze, excuse me. Okay. Yes, so licorice is included in several plants that are from parts of the world with moist winters and dry summers. They're drought tolerant, but they can survive wet periods far better than so many drought tolerant plants that originate in deserts. So you can see the difference. So you've got the pretty drought tolerant, but they don't mind being wet as well, which is good for England, obviously. Most of these plants serve several functions, such as offering both food and habitat. And then we'll see licorice. Here we've got a nice chart of why licorice is a good dynamic nutrient accumulator. And we've got the nutrients that they can bring up. So I know the first one is nitrogen. This is something obviously I should have looked up before. Oh, it's only the two. So I'm pretty sure it's nitrogen and potassium, the two nutrients that they bring up. And because it's got this long taproot, it'll bring the nutrients right up and help the surrounding plants. So licorice once grew wild in the south of Europe, North Africa and West Asia. It's now mainly cultivated in the Middle East as an ingredient in sweets and tobacco. It's long been, and we used to be able to buy, probably still can buy, licorice rolling papers in this country. But that's the sort of commercial use of licorice. It may be best to grow licorice in a polytunnel. Why I'm saying that is because of the wind and especially if you're in a northern area. It needs that little bit extra protection. If you treat it like a Mediterranean plant, it will serve you like a Mediterranean plant. So it needs its conditions really. And don't forget the sandiness of the soil and the stream for optimum conditions. Nothing to stop the rest of us trying. I'm sure some of us will have very good results. I'm determined to try again one day. So it's part of the legume or pea family, and as such it holds nitrogen, as we said, fixing bacteria in its root nodules, which of course benefits the surrounding area by increasing soil fertility, not soil. At the end of, that's probably what it does to us. At the end of the season, the nitrogen in the soil is again supplemented by the mulch from the fallen leaves. Bees are very attracted to licorice, also adding to its value as a permaculture plant. However, licorice is a very thirsty plant during its growing season, so you have to take that into consideration. If you've got a nice water system in place, then certainly stick a licorice plant in there, but it is quite thirsty. So that detracts from its value. You do have to think, I've got my watering can, that's it. So the work that I would have to put in to keep licorice alive is probably a bit prohibitive for me at the moment. Like my garden here is too windy and too cold, and my other garden's lovely and sheltered, but I would have to take in, I mean, although I'm obviously going to not just tend licorice when I go there, but I have to take in the fact that I've got to drive there in the first place. Okay, but if its medical use is very specifically beneficial for you and your family, this may override the concern about water. So we're coming back in a minute with the phytochemicals. I'm pushing my luck with the timings on a couple of these videos this time. So hopefully, I apologise in advance if this makes watching a bit peculiar. I'm not an expert. Doing my best. And I'll try and keep it in. I don't want to go over 10 minutes because I know that it's really difficult to send the videos for my editor to look at. My editor, bless her. Thank you. Thank you, Jax. Brilliant editing of all my videos. I might still make it look very amateurish, but that's nothing to do with her skills. Okay, so licorice contains about 300 phytochemicals. Some of the most important from a medical point of view are as follows: the volatile oils, the coumarins, the chalcones, the triterpenes, the flavonoids, the tannins, and glycosides. The two glycosides are glyceretinic acid and glycyrrhizin, and they're both only found in licorice. And calcium, so a very important mineral. So the volatile oils, aka essential oils, before the extraction, so the volatile oils while they're still in the plant, they're important to the plant for attracting pollinators and deterring predators. They may benefit respiratory, digestive or circulatory systems. So part of the reason licorice is such a great after dinner tea is because of this, the volatile oils affecting your digestive system. They can also be analgesic, mild painkiller, antimicrobial, calmative, stops flatulence being a problem. Diaphoretic, so that induces sweat when you need to get rid of toxins through your sweat. Expectorant, expels mucus. Febrifuge gets rid of fever. Galactagogue promotes breast milk, so nice for the mums. Antispasmodic, sedative. Rubefacin, which causes redness and irritation, but pain relief comes along with that, with a rubefacin. Licorice also contains coumarins. These chemicals were first isolated from tonka beans. They have a vanilla smell and a bitter taste, which possibly protects plants from predators. Coumarins are anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, anti-HIV, anti-tuberculosis, anti-cancer, antioxidant. So it's working against your free radicals, and anti-arrhythmic, so it's what stops an irregular heartbeat from being too irregular, and also anti-neoplastic, which stop abnormal growths or tumours. So triterpenes are terpenes with 6 isoprene units. They're produced by animals, plants and fungi. They are anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer. They protect your immunity. They prevent obesity, diabetes and atherosclerosis or arteriosclerosis. Both mean the same thing. It's a gradual plaque build-up which may lead to chest pain or angina. So it's hardening of the arteries, really. Pains in the legs or arms, shortness of breath, fatigue, confusion, muscle weakness in the legs, and hyperlipidemia, which is high levels of lipids or lipoproteins, which causes an imbalance of cholesterol. So the bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol, outweighs the HDL. cholesterol, the high density cholesterol lipids. Also present in licorice are flavonoids. These are yellow polyphenolic secondary metabolites. They are antioxidant, which means they inhibit oxidization and therefore free radicals, which harm cells and contribute to cancer and heart disease. Flavonoids are anti-inflammatory, prevent cardiovascular disease and diabetes. They can improve cognitive function and protect the brain. That's probably another one of my motives. I'm determined to keep dementia at bay as long as possible. My dad was pretty good until he was like 80. And then succumbed to it a bit, but then he got better when he was living with other people again. So that would be the time when I want to get in a nursing home and get a bit of social life, I guess. They can improve cognitive function and protect the brain. They are anti-aging. They regulate cellular activity and enzyme functions. They fight allergies and pain and protect against viral infections. Flavonoids are found in kale, red cabbage, dark chocolate, soybeans, parsley, berries, tea and citrus fruits. Then tannins, these are bitter and astringent polyphenols. They're found in grapes, in tree bark and in galls, which are the abnormal outgrowths on a plant. Particularly you see them on oak trees and other plant tissues. Tannins are beneficial for cardiovascular and circulatory problems and digestion again. They are anti-inflammatory and anti-carcinogenic, so they're against cancer and anti-mutagenic, which means that they protect against genetic mutation. Glycyrrhetinic acid can only be found in licorice. It's anti-cancer. It helps weight loss, controls blood sugar, fights infection, protects the liver and is anti-inflammatory. Glycyrrhizin is also only to be found in licorice. It's saponin. It's antioxidant, anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial. It helps reduce body fat, heals ulcers, especially stomach ulcers, and infections. Glycyrrhizin is also anti-allergic, anti-tumour, anti-diabetic and hepaprotective, so it protects the liver. Licorice has very high levels of calcium, which is a silvery metal, a mineral and an electrolyte. Calcium builds strong bones and teeth and supports muscle movement and nerve function, regulates blood pressure and hormone levels, aids communication between cells and helps prevent colon cancer and preeclampsia in pregnancy, interestingly. Calcium is found in tofu, leafy greens, including kale, mustard greens, beet greens, bok choy, Swiss chard, spinach and collard greens, as well as in beans and okra. And we're coming back to look at the magic of licorice. So going into the magic, this is my third attempt, and the magic is really playing tricks with me. So we've got Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, and I'm a Sagittarius, and I'm also talking about Mercury and Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So the regression of Mercury. So Mercury's not actually going backwards. It's like being in a car when another car starts. So it feels like it's going backwards rather than it is going backwards. But we call it retrograde. And it will mess things up with your communication. I already have a problem with my communication because my Mercury is particularly, it's in a relationship with the sun, which is more than a conjunction, it's combust. So every now and then my abilities of communication get burnt out by the rays of the sun. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So if this sounds a little bit as if I've done it 3 times, I have. So anyway, licorice is so powerful. This is what we're talking about now. It's a real meeting of the minds in a plant. Firstly, it's ruled by Mercury. So Mercury is messenger of the gods and ruler of both the 3rd house of communication and the 6th house of health and service, particularly important for herbal matters. We're talking about astrology here. So Mercury is also the ruler of Gemini. Mercury supports the lungs and energizes movement of both thought and breath, and by extension, of course, speech. Mercury is mercurial. If you think of Hermes, Mercury's Greek counterpart, both of them, I think, Mercury and Hermes, both have wings. Mercury is fast, airy and communicative. Liquorice is, however, also ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter rules the 9th house, which is opposite the 3rd house, and Sagittarius, which is opposite Gemini. While Mercury is fast, communicative and concerned with short journeys and friends and siblings, Jupiter is slower, philosophical and concerned with larger travel, not just a little jaunt, not just a little trip, big travelling. So you talk about, you know, a 6-month stay in a country rather than going for a week is Jupiter rather than Mercury. And the world, or even universal communication rather than this communication, quick fire communication with your friends and your neighbours and generally socially with people you meet. So because of this, Jupiter is regarded as the higher octave of Mercury, and so licorice combines the power of both, which are equally important, and represents a huge breadth of spirituality, not the dogmatic religion of Sagittarius. If you think of the Spanish Inquisition is the best example of Sagittarian dogma, and the insistence that everybody thinks the same thing. Mercury brings a quicker wit and a more airy and intellectual logic, and also a bit more lightheartedness to Jupiter's fiery zeal. Licorice was and is often burned in temples and religious ceremonies, was often buried in Egyptian tombs, presumably for protection on the greatest Jupiterian journey of them all. For most of us, Mercury represents a tendency to hide behind craftiness and wit, while Jupiter can be boastful and too expansive. Licorice finds the midpoint between the two. It alleviates the tension in the throat and sweetens the breath. Licorice enhances spell work and can be commanding and mind-altering. For example, allowing someone to get the job, navigate disagreements, and be more convincing generally. It can also stimulate love connections. In the tarot, licorice is the hermit. So the hermit is associated with Virgo, which is in turn ruled again by Mercury. More on the service and health side, though. So beautiful for Herb to be ruled like this. The hermit also is the peacemaker, searching first for the peace in himself or herself, and then being the light bearer for others. So again, this sense of service to others. The hermit teaches by example. Virgo works on themselves in seclusion and then teaches by example and puts themselves in the service of others. Very Virgoan quality. There is inner attainment and humility. Of course, the flip side of the hermit is hiding, holding back, self-delusion, false humility, darkness and withdrawal. And even as far as a dark night of the soul is ruled by the hermit. This meeting of the minds between Mercury and Jupiter that Liquorice embodies is portrayed beautifully by this hermit archetype. So we'll go on to see what the tarot has to say. Okay, so we've got the hermit here, which in my Herbal tarot, just finding the box for you. I do this every week, I think. But just so that anybody who hasn't watched any of the others knows. So this is my Herbal tarot. Let's just get it so you can see it. By Michael Tierra and Candice Cantin. And they have the hermit as with Liquorice. We looked before in the magic section about how Liquorice embodies the meeting of the two kinds of mind, the mercurial mind of Gemini and the Jupiterian philosophical mind of Jupiter and Sagittarius, and how they meet in Liquorice. And this is extended with the mercurial aspect of Virgo. So the hermit leaves society and goes in on himself, even to the point of a dark night of the soul, so that he can come back and shine his light for humanity. So again, it's this dualism, this going into yourself so that you can better serve humanity. And the cards I'm going to use today to clarify this is the Wild Unknown Tarot. Let's just put that in the place so I know it can be seen. The Wild Unknown Tarot by Kim Krantz. Very nice tarot. So I've shuffled it quite a bit. I'm just going to go in for a few last shuffles. And then we'll see what it's got to give us. So we're talking about Liquorice and Hermit and the mentality, the mercurial communicating, the Virgo sense of service, and of course its association with health as well. You know, it's about making yourself better so that you can make everyone else better, really. So you can go back in the world after being the hermit. Oh, here we go. So this is the 8 of Wands, I think. The Wands and the Swords are pretty similar in this pack, but I'll soon know when I look in the book. I think the 8 of Swords actually is a totally, yes, it is a totally different card. So the 8 of Wands, so it's sudden movement or change. So I guess if you've been in this hermit mode, there's always some move or change in life, but this is quite a sudden one with the 8 involved. 8's always involved with change. So it's like lightning, strikes like lightning. It's a card of news, change or clarity in an unresolved situation. This might be after this dark night of the soul. This is what you quite often get, is this sudden realization, so that you can move again. You might hear from an old friend out of the blue, or receive some surprising news that shifts the direction of your course. This card sometimes means literal movement is on the horizon. So be ready to travel if the opportunity arises. Well, travel is the Jupiterian side of the Liquorice. Is this notion of travel, especially to expand your mind. You know, it's not 2 week all in on a Spanish coast somewhere. It's travel, proper travel to meet other cultures and learn. Okay, see if there's any more cards about... Oh, there's another one just came out. I was filming, they come out so quickly, they really mean it. And another 8. Yeah. So it's saying there's nothing left for you here. All these 8 broken cups are enough to tell anybody that it's time to move. Stagnation, ill health, and I suppose if you stay in this hermit energy for too long, it's a good sign to get up and move. Otherwise, you the very thing that you're trying to improve yourself is going to go stagnant, and you know, too much of a good thing. Even being able to take yourself out of society, which is in itself a healthy thing, but it's time to move. There's no hope of rekindling what's been lost. You must start anew. This card also points to phases of illness and physical stagnation, as we said. The message could not be more clear. Nothing good remains for you here. Lift your eyes to the horizon and let your feet lead you forward. So that's really pertinent, I suppose, to Liquorice. This Jupiterian travel that we've got with the 8 of Wands, and then the 8 of Cups following that. Let me just put it so you can see it. The 8 of Cups, saying there really isn't anything to stop you, and nothing to stay for. In fact, if you stay in this hermit, you know, it's quite a dangerous position in itself to be stuck in this hermit position, especially if you start thinking that you're the wise one, you know. Which you may have been for a little while, but it's no good for anybody long term. These 2 have fallen out. We've got the Empress and the Mother of Cups, which is rather lovely. So the Empress, I'll see what the book says about it, but the Empress, everything comes to her. She's like all the queens rolled up in one. Mother Nature, a person pregnant with ideas, new life and possibilities, abundance and fruitfulness. That's what it says in this deck. And the Mother of Cups, that's the Queen of Cups in other decks. The Queen of Cups, this is all about love. Beautiful, dreamy woman, a visionary. So this would be the way maybe to come out of this hermit. You might be talking to me. I've been sat here on my own for far too long. Yeah, so that's quite a nice spread, I think, for Liquorice. And Hermit. And it's all that sweetness of communication. This makes sense with this Queen of Cups. You know, to communicate sweetly, to breathe sweetly on people. And I'm just going to look for your spirit animals. I'm not taking this one because it fell out before I was even thinking about it. So just going to have a look and see if there's an animal spirit that relates to this Liquorice and the Hermit and the Queen of Cups that we've seen so far. And these 2 8s about movement, you know, get up, get out. People are waiting for you. You're needed. Your guiding light is needed. So I'll try 3 more and then I'm going to give it up. I'm going to push it 1, 2, 3. Yeah, no, it's not. They're not coming out naturally. So that's that for now. And next week, it's M is for mullein, which I hope you'll find really interesting. It's one of my faves. Okay, bye.